What happens when one of America's most trusted news anchors crosses an invisible line, live on national television? Gayle King, a household name, a pillar of journalistic integrity, and a longtime face of CBS News, found herself at the epicenter of a firestorm. One moment, one quote, was all it took to flip her world upside down. But was the controversy truly about what she said? Or had CBS been planning this all along? For years, Gayle was untouchable, but suddenly, the media queen was dethroned in a whirlwind of scandal, public outrage, and corporate betrayal. This is the fictional story of how a single televised moment became the breaking point in a much deeper war inside CBS News. A story of backroom politics, media manipulation, and a woman pushed to the edge, then forced out of the spotlight she helped define, and what came after might just be more shocking than the moment itself. Long before the controversy made headlines, and long before social media began dissecting her every word, Gayle King was already a legend in American broadcast journalism. Her rise wasn't overnight. It was a slow, deliberate climb built on persistence, precision, and presence. Born in Chevy Chase, Maryland, and raised for part of her youth in Turkey due to her father's work with the U.S. government, Gayle developed a unique worldview early on. She wasn't the kind of person to be easily swayed by public opinion or frightened by controversy. She carried a quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. That quality would become her greatest asset as a journalist, and ultimately, a double-edged sword. She began her broadcast career in the late 1970s, at a time when women of color were still underrepresented and often undervalued in television news. Gayle didn't just walk into a newsroom, she stormed into it with poise. She interned at WJZ-TV in Baltimore, where, coincidentally, she worked alongside a young Oprah Winfrey. The two formed an unshakable bond, but their paths were still very much separate, at least at first. Gayle made her real mark at WFSB-TV in Hartford, Connecticut. For 18 years, she was a fixture of the evening news, becoming a local icon and a source of trusted information for an entire generation of viewers. During that time, she won multiple Emmys, but more importantly, she earned the public's trust, not with flash, but with consistency. In those days, Gayle was more than a news anchor. She was part of people's daily routines. Viewers welcomed her into their homes like family. She didn't read the news, she explained it. She brought warmth to even the coldest of headlines. She asked hard questions, but never made it about herself, and that integrity followed her everywhere she went. Her big break into national media didn't come until much later, when CBS tapped her to help revamp their flailing morning show. It was a gamble, and not everyone believed she had what it took to hold down a national broadcast. She wasn't flashy, she didn't chase viral clips, but what she did have was rare authenticity. When CBS This Morning launched with Gayle as one of its anchors, the ratings were modest, but something was different. Viewers weren't just watching, they were connecting. Gayle brought a calm confidence that contrasted beautifully with the chaos of modern media. She asked the questions people at home wanted to ask. She didn't perform, she informed. And perhaps most remarkably, she did all this while living in the shadow of one of the most powerful media moguls in the world, her best friend, Oprah Winfrey. For years, critics tried to reduce her success to mere proximity. She's only there because of Oprah, they'd say. But Gayle never tried to deny the connection. Instead, she let her work speak for itself, and over time, it shouted louder than any rumor. Her handling of emotionally fraught interviews, like the unforgettable R. Kelly moment where she sat unflinching as the singer screamed and gestured wildly, proved that she could navigate chaos with grace. That moment wasn't just viral, it was iconic. It earned her widespread praise and cemented her status as the calm in the eye of any media storm. From that point forward, she wasn't just Oprah's best friend, she was Gayle King, one of the most trusted faces in broadcast journalism. Under her tenure, CBS This Morning experienced a renaissance. Ratings climbed, the show gained critical acclaim, and Gayle became more than a journalist. She became a brand, the type of person networks lean on during elections, national crises, or cultural reckonings. She brought both steel and softness to the role, a balance that's nearly impossible to teach. But beneath the polished surface of daytime television, trouble had been brewing. Gayle's rise was meteoric, yes, but so was the pressure. She wasn't just expected to deliver the news. She was expected to be the news when the moment called for it. Her voice was one of calm reason in the noise of scandal, misinformation, and outrage. But even the strongest voices can falter or be manipulated. As her influence grew, so did the scrutiny. Every sentence was dissected, every segment was monitored, and every slip, even the imagined ones, could ignite a media wildfire. Gayle had spent a lifetime earning the trust of the public, but in today's world, that trust is a fragile currency, one misstep away from being wiped clean. And while Gayle had survived controversies before, the one that was waiting just ahead would be different. This time, it wasn't just about words. It was about power, and CBS was ready to make a move. Long before the broadcast that triggered her downfall, there were signs of tension simmering behind the scenes. Insiders whispered about friction between Gayle and CBS executives, especially after the network's leadership shakeup in 2023. According to one former producer, who asked to remain anonymous, Gayle had grown increasingly vocal about editorial decisions, sometimes clashing with producers and pushing back against sensationalist angles. She didn't want to be part of the circus, the source claimed, but the new CBS wanted bigger ratings and viral moments. Even as her ratings remained strong, there was a growing sense that the network wanted someone more flexible, younger, cheaper, easier to manage. A newer generation of anchors was being quietly groomed behind closed doors. Meanwhile, Gayle remained front and center, unaware that her grip on the anchor's chair was slipping. Then came that day. It was a Thursday morning broadcast like any other, until it wasn't. Gayle was interviewing a guest, a popular comedian promoting a new stand-up special. During the segment, the comedian quoted a controversial bit from their act, referencing how language changes meaning in different communities. Gayle, reading directly from the transcript in an attempt to contextualize the bit, said the N-word out loud, uncensored. The moment stunned the studio. There was a second of silence. The guest awkwardly laughed it off, but the air had changed. It was one of those moments where time seems to freeze. CBS producers panicked. They cut the feed seconds later and returned with a commercial. By the time the broadcast resumed, the damage had already been done. Clips of the moment had already been ripped, clipped, and uploaded to social media. Within minutes, Gayle King was trending, for all the wrong reasons. The reaction was instant and brutal. Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram were ablaze with outrage. Some called it a slip. Others said it revealed something far worse. What complicated the response was that Gayle had quoted someone else. She hadn't used the word herself. But in the current cultural climate, context didn't matter. Perception was everything. Public figures weighed in. Civil rights leaders condemned the moment. Celebrities stayed silent. Viewers split down the middle, some defending her as a journalist doing her job, others demanding CBS take action. Meanwhile, advertisers began reaching out quietly behind the scenes. One brand reportedly paused their multi-million-dollar campaign until CBS clarified the situation. By the afternoon, CBS had pulled the full episode from all platforms. Gayle's face vanished from the homepage of their website. Something was shifting. The next morning, Gayle returned to the anchor chair. Her tone was serious, her words carefully chosen. "I want to address something that happened yesterday," she began. "In quoting a comedian during our segment, I used a word that should never be said under any circumstances. I was trying to give context, but I now realize that context doesn't matter when harm is caused." She paused. "I'm deeply sorry to those I hurt. That was never my intention." But the apology didn't land the way she'd hoped. Critics called it vague, performative. "She should know better," read one viral tweet. "She's not new to this." What no one saw was what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. Gayle reportedly stormed off set, furious. According to one source close to the production team, she hadn't wanted to apologize at all. She believed she was doing her job, reporting accurately, quoting a source. But CBS insisted. Some say they even wrote the apology for her, and that wasn't the end of it. The backlash wasn't just loud, it was volcanic. And while the public fumed online, CBS executives were scrambling behind the scenes to figure out what their next move should be. Gayle King had long been a pillar of the network's credibility. But in the corporate world, reputation is a currency, and when it's devalued, it doesn't matter how long you've been loyal. Inside the gleaming glass offices of CBS's Manhattan headquarters, emergency meetings were called. Damage control wasn't just an option. It was essential. The network's PR team worked overtime crafting carefully worded statements that neither confirmed nor denied anything, hoping the firestorm might settle if they stayed silent just long enough. But silence rarely works in the age of virality. Every minute the network didn't act, hashtags like "How do you fire Gayle" and "Aller Gayle-gate" grew louder. Some called for accountability, others defended her fiercely, claiming the incident was being blown out of proportion or, worse, weaponized for political gain. The debate wasn't just about what she said, it was about what it represented. Internally, the mood shifted from confusion to cold calculation. Executives began poring over old interviews, past segments, looking for a pattern, any reason they could use to justify whatever decision they eventually made. And as this happened, Gayle was left in an uncomfortable limbo. She wasn't suspended, she wasn't fired, she wasn't even publicly reprimanded, but she knew what it meant when your calls started going unanswered and your next live appearance wasn't confirmed. She had been in the business long enough to recognize a pattern when it emerged. The tension, the vague reassurances, the sudden chill in once warm conversations, all of it pointed to one thing. CBS was preparing to make her disappear without actually saying it. And still, Gayle held her head high. She continued attention. attending editorial meetings via Zoom, still logged in early, still took notes, still prepared like the consummate professional she'd always been. But something in her had changed. Something had cracked. Not because of what the public was saying, but because of what the network wasn't saying. Rumors began swirling in the newsroom. Some whispered that she had already been benched indefinitely. Others claimed she was negotiating a quiet exit. A few loyal producers tried to keep her in the loop, but even they couldn't stop the inevitable tide. "We love you, Gayle," one senior staffer reportedly texted her late at night. "But I don't think they're going to let this go." Still, CBS was hesitant. Firing Gayle King wasn't like cutting loose a low-level reporter. It would send shockwaves through the media world. She wasn't just an anchor. She was a symbol of trust, a symbol of the network's progress, and most importantly, a symbol of their relationship with a certain media empire run by her best friend. Executives knew that if they handled this the wrong way, they could damage more than their ratings. They could damage their legacy. So for a while, they played both sides. They let Gayle believe she still had a seat at the table, while quietly reaching out to potential replacements. One name that kept coming up was Norah O'Donnell, already a CBS fixture and viewed as safe by the higher-ups. Another was a young, up-and-coming journalist with a squeaky clean record and a social media following that skewed younger. The message was clear. CBS wasn't just trying to fix the present. They were preparing for the future. As the internal search for damage control continued, Gayle found herself in a strange state of professional purgatory. She was still being paid, but her screen time disappeared. Her interviews were quietly reassigned. One by one, the pillars of her platform were dismantled, until there was little left to stand on. But it wasn't just professional. The emotional toll of being quietly iced out by the very network she helped rebuild was unlike anything she'd experienced. Gayle had faced public backlash before. She'd asked controversial questions. She'd been dragged online, and she had always come out the other side, wiser, tougher, more resilient. But this time, the betrayal came from within. In moments of solitude, she would replay the footage in her mind. Was it really that bad? Had she said something so unforgivable? Or was this just an excuse, a convenient slip that allowed those in power to push her out without having to confront her directly? The more she thought about it, the more it seemed like this had been building. Maybe the mistake was just the match that lit the fuse CBS had already laid out. And as the days turned into weeks, Gayle stopped checking her work emails. She stopped waiting for a call that wouldn't come, and she started writing again. Not news copy, but journal entries, fragments of thought, flashes of pain, and the harsh realization that in the world of TV journalism, legacy only matters until it doesn't. Still, Gayle King wasn't about to let her story end in silence. Not yet. Because the truth was, what happened next would shake the entire media industry. 1 week later, the statement dropped. CBS News and Gayle King have mutually agreed to part ways. "We are grateful for her years of dedication, integrity, and excellence in journalism." But behind closed doors, it was anything but mutual. Sources close to King revealed she was blindsided, furious. She had no intention of leaving until CBS gave her no choice. Some say she was offered a quiet severance deal in exchange for silence. Others claim she's planning legal action. Oprah, according to insider reports, personally reached out to CBS's top brass demanding answers. Her calls were reportedly ignored. The media world was stunned. How could a network let go of its most recognizable anchor over a single moment? But this wasn't just about one word. This was about control, image, and corporate politics. Gayle vanished from the public eye. No statements, no interviews. For 6 long months, she went completely silent. Then, rumors began to circulate. A secret media project, a new network, a tell-all memoir. One leak even claimed she had recordings of internal CBS meetings, audio proof that her ousting was planned months in advance. She was spotted at dinners with executives from Netflix, Apple TV, and Amazon. Some say she's been quietly recruiting former CBS staffers to help her build a new kind of news platform, one that doesn't answer to corporate overlords. She's also reportedly been approached by streaming giants to host a no-holds-barred interview series. Think 60 Minutes, but without the filters. A place where nothing is off-limits, including her own story. Her fans are waiting, her critics are watching, and the industry is holding its breath. So, was Gayle King really fired over a single slip of the tongue? Or was this just the final chapter in a story CBS had been writing for months, maybe even years? In this fictional tale, one thing's for sure, power in the media world is fragile, and sometimes even the most respected voices can be silenced, not by scandal, but by strategy. But if there's one thing Gayle King has proven time and time again, it's that you don't count her out. Not yet, not ever.